Welcome to Silent Crime Case, where we explore some of the darkest and most mysterious criminal investigations. Today, we dive into a chilling case that has left a quiet community shattered, a crime that changed lives forever. Join us as we unravel the tragic story of Sarah Thompson, a vivacious 38-year-old whose life came to a horrifying end. Sarah was a respected marketing executive in the rapidly growing city of Cedarville, Texas. Known for her warm smile, love of travel, and dedication to her family, Sarah seemed to have it all. But behind the picture-perfect facade, a tragedy was about to unfold that would leave everyone questioning. Was her death an accident, or was something far more sinister at play? On the night of September 12, 2011, the tight-knit town of Cedarville was forever changed. The discovery of Sarah's lifeless body sent shockwaves through the community, unraveling a web of deceit and manipulation. What could have driven someone to such an unspeakable act? How did this seemingly perfect family become the center of one of the most shocking murder investigations Cedarville had ever seen? The events that follow would reveal secrets no one expected, and as the case unfolds, it would expose the dark undercurrents in a seemingly loving family. Betrayal, manipulation, and a tragic end would leave the community asking, how well do you really know your loved ones? As we dive deeper into the story, we'll explore the characters, the crime, and the dark secrets that eventually tore this family apart. Stay with us as we uncover the truth behind the tragic death of Sarah Thompson. Sarah Thompson lived a life that many envied. She had a successful career at Matrix Solutions, a marketing firm where she was known for her creativity and strong leadership. Outside of work, Sarah cherished her family, her husband James, and their 17-year-old daughter, Emily. Sarah was the epitome of a modern working woman. Balancing her high-pressure job with her responsibilities at home, she had mastered the art of appearing calm under stress. Her friends often marveled at how effortlessly she handled everything, but those closest to her knew that Sarah was struggling beneath the surface. At Matrix Solutions, Sarah was known for her ability to think outside the box, a skill that had made her a rising star in the marketing world. Her colleagues respected her, and clients sought her out for her innovative ideas. Despite her success, Sarah never let her work overshadow her family. Her Instagram feed was filled with pictures of family vacations, weekend barbecues, and precious moments spent with her daughter Emily. With over 250,000 followers, she had become something of an influencer, with fans admiring her seemingly perfect life. However, there were cracks in the facade. In recent months, Sarah's close friends had noticed that she seemed more stressed than usual. She often confided in them about the struggles she faced in her marriage. James, her husband, had become distant, and their once loving relationship had grown cold. The pressures of work and home life were beginning to take a toll on Sarah's health. Little did she know, these underlying tensions would soon come to a head in the most tragic way. James Thompson, a financial consultant, had always been seen as a steady, reliable figure in the community. He coached the local soccer team, helped neighbors with their finances, and was a devoted father to Emily. But beneath his calm exterior, James was harboring secrets of his own. He had been unfaithful to Sarah for over a year, a fact that would soon come to light during the investigation. Emily, the couple's teenage daughter, had recently started exhibiting signs of rebellion. At 17, she was trying to navigate the challenges of high school, friendships, and her evolving relationship with her parents. Sarah and Emily's relationship had become strained, with frequent arguments about curfews, friends, and Emily's future plans. The tension in the Thompson household was palpable, but no one could have predicted how it would escalate into a deadly confrontation. The family dynamic had become one of constant friction. Sarah, trying to maintain control, enforced stricter rules on Emily, hoping to keep her daughter on the right path. Meanwhile, Emily saw her mother's rules as suffocating, feeding into her resentment. And James, distracted by his affair, was largely absent, leaving Sarah to manage the growing tensions at home. The simmering conflicts within the family would eventually boil over in a shocking way. It was the night of September 12, 2011, and the temperature in Cedarville, Texas was unbearable, even as night fell. James Thompson had just returned home from a work trip to Houston. He expected to be greeted by his wife and daughter, but instead, he walked into a nightmare. As James entered the house, he immediately sensed that something was wrong. The house was unusually quiet. The kitchen, where Sarah would usually be preparing dinner, was dark and empty, save for the eerie glow of the refrigerator light. He called out for Sarah, but there was no response. Walking further into the kitchen, James found her Sarah, lying on the cold tile floor, her body lifeless and still. Her once vibrant and energetic face was now pale, and her eyes, which had sparkled with life, were vacant. Next to her on the counter was an unfinished carton of ice cream, Sarah's favorite treat. Panic set in, and James fumbled for his phone, his hands trembling as he dialed 911. When paramedics arrived, it was already too late. Sarah was pronounced dead at the scene, and it was clear that something sinister had taken place. The Cedarville police arrived shortly after, led by Detective Michael Larson, a seasoned investigator with a reputation for solving even the most complex cases. The crime scene offered little in the way of immediate answers. There were no signs of forced entry, no evidence of a struggle, and nothing out of place except for the ice cream carton that lay on the counter. Detective Larson knew that this case would require more than a routine investigation. Something about the scene felt off, and he couldn't shake the feeling that this was just the beginning of a much larger and darker story. The discovery of Sarah's body sent shockwaves through Cedarville. Neighbors gathered outside the Thompson home, their faces etched with concern and disbelief. Sarah had been a beloved member of the community, and the idea that something so tragic could happen to someone like her seemed unimaginable. Adding to the confusion were the last few social media posts that Sarah had shared just hours before her death, images of her dinner preparations, captions filled with positivity. No one could have guessed that her life would end so soon after sharing these moments with the world. Friends who saw the posts were baffled, wondering how quickly life could change, even when everything appeared normal from the outside. Detective Michael Larson was called to the scene that night. A veteran of the Cedarville Police Department, Larson was known for his meticulous attention to detail and relentless pursuit of the truth. As Detective Larson began his initial examination of the crime scene, he was immediately struck by the eerie calm that hung over the Thompson household. There were no signs of a break-in, no shattered glass, no overturned furniture, nothing that would suggest an intruder had been in the home. It appeared as though Sarah had collapsed in the middle of her normal evening routine, with no outward signs of foul play. However, Larson knew better than to take things at face value. He instructed the forensic team to gather as much evidence as possible, starting with the ice cream carton that seemed oddly out of place. Could it hold the key to understanding what had happened to Sarah? As the investigation unfolded, the focus quickly turned to the people closest to Sarah, her husband James and their daughter Emily. Larson began by interviewing James, who appeared to be in shock, his grief evident as he recounted the events leading up to the discovery of Sarah's body. James claimed that he had been away on a business trip to Houston and had returned home late that evening. According to him, Sarah had been in good spirits before he left, and there had been no indication that anything was wrong. However, Larson couldn't shake the feeling that James was holding something back. His answers were vague, and his demeanor seemed off, not quite the reaction Larson had come to expect from grieving spouses. Emily, on the other hand, was more difficult to read. The 17-year-old was visibly shaken by her mother's death, but there was an undercurrent of anger in her responses. She admitted that she and her mother had been arguing more frequently in recent months, but insisted that she had nothing to do with Sarah's death. Still, Larson couldn't ignore the tension that seemed to permeate the Thompson household. As the days passed, more and more information came to light. Friends and neighbors revealed that Sarah had been under an immense amount of stress in the weeks leading up to her death. She had confided in several people that her marriage to James was on shaky ground, and she had even mentioned that she suspected he was having an affair. Additionally, Emily had been acting out, engaging in reckless behavior and clashing with her mother on a regular basis. The investigation was further complicated when detectives discovered a series of strange text messages on Sarah's phone. Some of the messages hinted at a growing sense of paranoia, as if Sarah had been afraid of something or someone. These messages only deepened the mystery surrounding her death. Further analysis of Sarah's digital footprint revealed an unexpected financial discrepancy, a withdrawal of $10,000 from her personal bank account just days before her death. The large sum, which had been transferred to an anonymous account, raised red flags for the investigators. Could this have been hush money, or was it payment for something more sinister? Larson knew he had to follow the money trail, a lead that would later prove crucial. The first person investigators turned to was James Thompson. As Sarah's husband, he was naturally the primary suspect. Though grief-stricken, James's initial interview with Detective Larson raised a few red flags. James had always been a respected member of the Cedarville community, known for his calm demeanor and dedication to his family. But as Larson pressed him for more details about his marriage, cracks began to appear in James's composed exterior. He admitted that things between him and Sarah had been tense, particularly in recent months. He acknowledged that they had grown distant, but he was adamant that he had never intended to harm her. However, Larson wasn't convinced. Phone records revealed a series of text messages between James and an unknown woman, suggesting that he had been having an affair. The messages were flirtatious in nature, and the timing of the affair coinciding with Sarah's growing suspicions raised even more questions. When confronted with the evidence, James became defensive. He admitted to the affair but denied any involvement in Sarah's death. He claimed that he had been in Houston the night she died, and that he had no idea how she could have been poisoned. Yet his alibi seemed shaky, and his erratic behavior during the interrogation made Larson even more suspicious. Meanwhile, Emily was also becoming a person of interest. Her rebellious behavior and strained relationship with her mother had made her a natural suspect in the eyes of the investigators. Friends of Emily described her as a troubled teenager, struggling to find her place in the world. They mentioned that Emily had been experimenting with drugs and had fallen in with a questionable crowd in recent months. During her interrogation, Emily was emotional and angry, lashing out at the detectives when they suggested that she might have played a role in her mother's death. She insisted that she had been out with friends the night Sarah died, but her story lacked detail, and her emotional outbursts only served to make her appear more guilty in the eyes of the investigators. As the investigation wore on, both James and Emily found themselves under increasing scrutiny. The forensic evidence was mounting, and it seemed as though the net was closing in on the Thompson family. But Larson knew that he needed more than just suspicion. He needed hard evidence to bring the truth to light. As the investigation continued, forensic experts began piecing together the puzzle. They carefully examined every detail of the crime scene, from Sarah's body to the kitchen items she had been using. The forensic team's analysis of the ice cream carton revealed the first major breakthrough in the case. Traces of cyanide were found in the remaining ice cream, confirming that Sarah had been poisoned. Cyanide is a fast-acting toxin that leaves few traces, making it a favored method in some of the most calculated and cold-blooded murders. But how had it ended up in Sarah's favorite treat? Detective Larson's team began tracing the source of the cyanide, a difficult task as it's not a substance that can be easily obtained. The investigation led them to an online purchase made under a false name, but the shipping address was close to the Thompson home. This led Larson to suspect that the poison had been carefully planned and acquired by someone with direct access to Sarah. Further forensic analysis revealed fingerprints on the ice cream carton, belonging to both Emily and James. Emily admitted that she had touched the ice cream, but insisted that she didn't know it had been poisoned. James's fingerprints were more difficult to explain. He claimed that he had been away when the ice cream was purchased and didn't remember touching it. The presence of his fingerprints, combined with his shaky alibi and the affair, placed him firmly in the spotlight. However, the forensic team wasn't finished. They also found traces of cyanide on a pair of gloves hidden in the back of a drawer in the laundry room. The gloves, which had traces of both James and Emily's DNA, suggested that the poisoning had been carefully planned. The discovery of the gloves was the missing piece of evidence that Larson needed. It was becoming increasingly clear that the murder of Sarah Thompson had been a premeditated act. As detectives continued to dig into the lives of the Thompsons, a disturbing pattern of secrets began to emerge. The turning point came when Larson uncovered the truth about James's affair. The woman, Rachel Martinez, was a colleague at James's office. Emails and text messages between the two revealed that the affair had been ongoing for over a year. The affair had become increasingly intense, and Sarah had recently discovered it, leading to several heated arguments between her and James. Rachel was called in for questioning, and her testimony revealed a dark twist. She admitted that James had talked about his marriage falling apart, but she claimed that he had never mentioned any plans to harm Sarah. However, some of the messages between them painted a different picture. In one text, James had mentioned that his life would be much simpler if Sarah weren't in the picture. While Rachel downplayed the comment as a joke, it added fuel to the growing suspicion that James had orchestrated his wife's death. But James wasn't the only one with secrets. Emily's friends provided further insight into her troubled behavior. They revealed that Emily had become increasingly angry at her mother in the months leading up to her death. Sarah had imposed stricter rules on Emily, including grounding her for her failing grades and forbidding her from seeing certain friends. Emily had confided in her friends that she couldn't stand living with her mother anymore. As investigators pieced together the relationships within the Thompson family, it became clear that both James and Emily had motives for wanting Sarah out of their lives. The question now was, who had acted on those motives? After weeks of intense investigation, the case reached a breaking point when Emily, overwhelmed by guilt and pressure, finally confessed. Emily's confession was heartbreaking and chilling. In a tearful interview with Detective Larson, she admitted that her father had manipulated her into poisoning her mother. According to Emily, James had convinced her that Sarah was the root of all their problems. He had told her that Sarah's strict rules and constant criticism were holding her back, and that they would both be happier if she were gone. Desperate for her father's approval, Emily agreed to help him. She purchased the cyanide online using a fake name, following her father's instructions. She hadn't fully understood the gravity of what she was doing. She had believed that it would make her life easier, that her father would be proud of her. But now, faced with the reality of her mother's death and her role in it, Emily was consumed with guilt. James, on the other hand, continued to deny his involvement. He insisted that Emily had acted on her own, but the evidence against him was overwhelming. His fingerprints on the ice cream carton, his affair with Rachel, and the text messages suggesting that Sarah was a problem that needed to be removed, all pointed to his complicity. In the face of mounting evidence, James remained defiant, claiming that he had been unfairly accused and that the investigators were trying to destroy his family. But with Emily's confession and the forensic evidence, it became clear that James had orchestrated the entire crime, using his daughter as an accomplice in a desperate bid to free himself from his marriage. The trial of James and Emily Thompson captivated the public, with media outlets covering every moment. The courtroom was packed as the prosecution presented its case. District Attorney Lisa Parker argued that James had been the mastermind behind the crime, using his daughter as an unwitting accomplice. Emily, though guilty of the act, had been manipulated by her father, making her a victim of his twisted plan. The prosecution presented the evidence clearly: the cyanide-laced ice cream, the text messages between James and Rachel, and Emily's heartbreaking confession. Defense attorney Charles Moore attempted to shift the blame entirely onto Emily, arguing that she had acted out of her own rebellion and desperation. He tried to discredit the confession by suggesting that Emily was emotionally unstable and could not be trusted to give a reliable account of events. The trial lasted for weeks, with both sides presenting compelling arguments. The defense painted Emily as a troubled teen who had acted alone, driven by her own resentment towards her mother. However, the prosecution maintained that James had used Emily's vulnerability to manipulate her into committing the crime. The jury deliberated for several days before reaching a verdict. James Thompson was found guilty of first-degree murder and conspiracy, while Emily was convicted of manslaughter due to her coerced involvement. James was sentenced to life in prison without parole, while Emily received a 20-year sentence with the possibility of parole. The courtroom was filled with emotion as the verdicts were read. Sarah's family and friends, who had attended the trial every day, wept openly, finally feeling a sense of justice for the woman whose life had been so tragically cut short. James, on the other hand, remained stoic as his sentence was handed down, showing no remorse for his role in the crime. Emily, now facing a long prison sentence, broke down in tears as the weight of her actions finally hit her. She had been used by the one person she thought she could trust, her father, and now she would spend the next 2 decades paying for a crime she never fully understood. The trial's conclusion left the town of Cedarville in shock. The Thompson family had been torn apart by lies, manipulation, and murder. The community, once quiet and close-knit, now carried the weight of a tragedy that no one could have seen coming. Sarah's death and the revelations that followed shattered the peaceful facade of Cedarville, leaving neighbors questioning how well they really knew the people next door. Emily, now imprisoned, would spend years grappling with the consequences of her actions. Her once bright future was now uncertain, and her relationship with her father had been forever tainted by his manipulation. James's name became synonymous with betrayal and cold-blooded murder. For Sarah's friends and family, the verdict provided some closure, but the loss of a beloved wife, mother, and friend left an unfillable void. For the community of Cedarville, the trial had raised uncomfortable questions about family dynamics and the hidden struggles that many face behind closed doors. What appeared to be a perfect family on the outside was, in reality, a web of lies, resentment, and manipulation. The case served as a grim reminder that even in the most seemingly idyllic homes, darkness can lurk just beneath the surface. The tragic story of Sarah Thompson serves as a stark reminder that darkness can lurk in the most unexpected places, even within the confines of what seems like a perfect family. As we close this chapter on Silent Crime Case, we're left contemplating the fragility of human relationships and the devastating consequences of unchecked emotions. What began as a tragic family drama spiraled into one of the most chilling murder cases Cedarville has ever seen. The legacy of Sarah Thompson's life, however, will be remembered far beyond the tragic end she met. Thank you for joining us on this journey through another haunting tale on Silent Crime Case. What are your thoughts on this case? Do you believe justice was truly served? Share your thoughts in the comments below, and don't forget to like, share, and subscribe for more gripping true crime stories. Until next time, stay safe, silent crime solvers.